Erin, let's start with you. What does doing more with less, what does that mean? What does that look like to you right now?
This is kind of a way of working that I've been doing for the last 10 years in trying to drive innovation into how we create experiences at IBM. And, what it means today is we're being squeezed even more. But I think that it really is working smarter, more creatively, taking a fresh look at things, being forced into that in some ways, which we all are. And I think it is a ripe opportunity to innovate. And that's a number of different things in terms of what type of venue, how you show up, who you're working with, what investments you make in certain things. Are there ways to trade with partners that have similar mission? So it really opens up a lot of different things that when we have a budget that we're used to, you just go right into it and you kind of do what you did before and maybe tweak it. Here, we're looking at ways that we really have to revolutionize how we
Mhm.
approach our strategies. So.
Love a lot of what you said there. Bethany, what about you? What does doing more with less for you look like right now?
I think for us, it's really focusing on maximizing ROI, right? Like a focus on quantity over quality and getting not only butts in seats, but the right butts in the seats, right? And targeting and spending your money on the right people. And that's super important as budgets are cut.
One each that you had said that I wrote down that I really, really like when it comes to doing more with less. One, Erin, you touched on partnering, right? So I think this is a little bit of a strategy, a little bit of an approach, like a mindset that you go to when you're asked to do that. Can you give us like a little bit of a breakdown on that? Just your thoughts.
Sure. I'll give you an example of how we did this last year. We wanted to have a presence at Cannes Lions, and if anyone has ever done that, the Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity, it's where the elite and the celebrities go and the top CMOs in the world, and you can't really step foot there without spending millions of dollars. And we had come at it kind of late, and so we looked at, okay, we know we don't have the budget at all to put towards this, especially a couple months before. So we started looking at partners. Who do we know who's going to be there that we do business with that has a similar mission to us, a similar message? And so we had a very small sponsorship that gave us a stage. And then through that, we said, okay, now for this very small investment, we have, and this is very, I'd say probably about 2% of what a typical IBM event budget is. Okay. For one of the most expensive places to show up. We basically said, okay, we have these sessions. What do we have to work with now? Let's go see what partners also want to tell this similar message. And so they then gave us access to their stage as we
Mm.
gave them access to our stage. And so the butts and seats that we were able to reach just continued to exponentially grow. And we had four major partners. And so now all of a sudden, we're not just in the one venue that we're sponsoring, but because we really didn't have those dollars to buy those extra activations, we traded, and for that one small investment had all of a sudden six stages we were on across the venues
Mm.
and dinners as well and things like that. So it really helped us get creative about how we could do so much more with a very, very small budget.
I love that. I think it's so applicable for everybody in the sense that like everybody has some form of partnership that they engage in, right? So however you're running events when you're asked to do more with less, right? How do you look to your partners? How do you look to being able to partner, give to get type of scenario? That's great. Bethany, so you mentioned like ROI and maximizing ROI. And what I really love about you saying that is like when I hear do more with less, what I'm kind of hearing in general is like, how do we squeeze more juice out of this fruit? It's the same fruit, right? But like we're trying to get more out of it. And the goals really don't change. No one's like, hey, I've cut your budget, or hey, we don't have this resource this year, but by the way, you don't have to do as good of a job as you did last year. No one says that, right? So that's what I love about that thought. You're getting creative to think, how do I get ROI and max out of this to think that way? So tell me a little bit about your thought process and kind of how you approach that.
Yeah, I'll give an example too. So every year for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, Sixth Sense has sponsored Forrester Summit. It used to be Serious Decisions. Now it's Forrester B2B Summit. And this year had a pretty significant cut in our budget, but our pipeline goal increased like it does every year. So we had to figure out, right, how do we change our strategy and
Right.
really again like maximize our spend to drive that pipeline at the end of the day. So For years, we used to host this big party. We used to buy out a bar on Rainy Street, and it was super fun and line out the
Mm.
door.
Love
Uh,
Rainy Street.
yeah, it was great.
Sorry, it's such a great
Uh,
street.
it is. But, we really weren't seeing ROI from it, and we were spending a
Mm.
ton of money. And we really don't need brand awareness anymore at that show. Like, we're very well known. We host ancillary events and dinners, so it really wasn't doing anything for us. So this year we decided instead to spend half the money on a super targeted high touch VIP event. And again, get the right people in the room versus a lot of people in the room. So, we're trying really hard with a decrease in budget to again figure out how to increase ROI
That's
and drive
excellent.
more play.
Couldn't you also
Yeah.
argue that regardless of a budget cut, right, and ask of revenue that is higher than before, that may have been strategically the better route to go, and it just took something to making you think a certain way to make the change?
Totally.
Yeah.
1,000%. And I think that's like, we all do this, right? We go to an event and we go back year after year and we kind of do the same thing because we've done it before. But I think
Yeah.
sometimes it does take, a decrease in budget or something else to prompt you to be creative and really think about, what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's definitely a catalyst for innovation. And I love what you shared, Bethany, about the strategy to do more curated, smaller. I think, I love Maya Angelou's quote of you might not remember what someone did, but you'll never forget how they made you feel.
Mm.
And, that's obvious for experiential. That's what we try to do, right? But I think we can get into here's how we go to an event, like into a pattern of doing the same things, especially when it's like, oh, we've got the money, so let's do that and let's make that happen. And this really is a time where it's like, how can I stand apart? How can I do something that someone's really going to remember, that they're really authentically going to feel connected? And how can we make people feel seen, heard, understood? And it's interesting that in this era of doing more with less, we also have more new disruptive technology like AI to help us do that. But it's also, that's a change agent too. So it's just a time when there's a lot of experimentation. And I just want to encourage, people, that's what we're doing too. You're not going to get it right every time, but it is the time, because there's so much churn and shift, to try new things. Like, for example, we went to Dreamforce like we always do, but we had a significant cut. And so we did some containers instead of a booth. We didn't even have a booth at Dreamforce. And it is a place where people expect to see certain things. And it was something unexpected from IBM to see that. So I think it's a time to try those things and see it as a positive, that take a smaller investment to incubate some more innovative things. Look at how AI can be a part of that to reach more. So there's some tools at our disposal as well that are less expensive, I think, at this time.
That's great. Can either of you give me anything that maybe you've worked on recently or that you're working on right now, right? Examples or specifics, like what are you trying to do more with less right now?
Yeah, I can go. So we're heading to Adobe Summit at the end of this month, and it's not a huge show for us. It's probably like tier 2, tier 3, right? We don't invest a ton, but we still want to make as big of an impact as we possibly can given our spend. So this year we're leaning into our own internal Sixth Sense staff and figuring out how to drive a big social play, right? So getting all of our internal influencers to really like go hard on LinkedIn, invite people to our breakfast and our evening event and come visit us at our booth and all the things that we're doing there. And just, it's free, right? I mean, it's totally free. We're just going to
Yeah.
try to blast and blow up everyone's LinkedIn feed. But I think, again, that comes from not having a ton of additional money to spend. And again, to Erin's point, like how can we be creative and think outside of the box and still get that awareness that we're trying to drive towards?
Good example. Erin, what about you? You got anything you're working on right now? Doing more with less?
Yeah. I think we're doing a lot more internally with our creative folks and our marketing folks. where we are really trying to tie in more closely with our sales and account reps and really focusing in on our existing clients and having them tell stories about us. And so that's again goes to the partnering. How can we provide some value to them in terms of an opportunity to speak or tell a story and then have them tell the story about us? And this is all kind of a more pre-work to an event. I think that as the digital marketing shifts and as we're coming out and getting more in person, we're doing a lot more work ahead of time and
Mhm.
deepening those relationships, and also giving opportunity for the number of ways that we can have touch points with our clients. So, we have our Think flagship event that's coming up in May. And, some folks might not be able to come to that, or maybe we're recommending to them before you come to Think, come to one of our innovation studios, attend a webinar. Like, we're getting smarter about not just targeting siloed or specific events and really looking at the
Yeah.
journey and the relationship and the full funnel of how to have that stickiness and that continued more authentic relationship versus let's get you to this event. Let's
Mhm.
build and cultivate this relationship. And that could include coming to this event, coming to this meetup, and trying to what Bethany was sharing with the more curated or personalized meetups. Those things are really going to resonate with people as they get more and more opportunities to go to events now as things are really opening up.
I love kind of how you're viewing that, right? From doing the work ahead of time, touch points, and thinking a little differently. It makes me think doing more with less. I was actually having a conversation this morning with a partner of ours, or hopefully soon to be partner of ours, that's over in Europe. And one of the things we were discussing is the sticker shock in pricing when they're brokering over to us with their clients, right? Because they want us to build and jump in and get in the middle for them, for their clients. And we got in this conversation. I said, hey, like, I think that should be such a trigger for either you or for us to open the conversation and say, hey, like, let's just say you didn't have to pay for the booth. Let's say I was Elon Musk, right? And we were going to build you this beautiful booth, whatever, and you didn't have to pay for it, right? What are you doing to make sure that you don't waste that booth and the opportunity that you're there? Like, let's shift the conversation that way, because there's a little bit of anxiety about the cost and things are happening. It's like the booth is not the problem solver. It's a piece of the problem solver. So it makes me think about like approach and the actions that you're taking ahead of time, and sort of the touch points that you're having. How are you making all this come together? It doesn't take less or more budget. It potentially just takes different line of thinking and the way that you're going into a trade show or going into an event.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
100%.